All right, welcome back to the show, guys. Greg Melita here, Jiu-Jitsu black belt, second degree, owner of Hampton's Jiu-Jitsu.
And I'm Brian DeLuca, Jiu-Jitsu black belt and author of Jiu-Jitsu for Small People and Other Weird Shit I Think About.
So, guys, we have some awesome special guests here. I want to bring on Gareth Hoernel, a black belt, and we've been training together at my academy in Hampton's Jiu-Jitsu, and I want to have him introduce our special guest today.
Yeah, guys, absolute pleasure and honor to be on this podcast with you, Excelsior gentlemen. Want to introduce a longtime friend and brother, first and foremost, Tyler Boone. Tyler Boone is a decorated Marine Corps combat veteran, an amazing human being I met probably about 11 years ago now while rolling on the sweat-soaked mats of a small academy in Wilmington, North Carolina. I also call him the killer koala because he is strangle savant and one of the most technical grapplers I've ever had the privilege of rolling with. He also runs Crest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu down in Hampstead, North Carolina. And by proxy of Tyler and the gentleman that he is, he introduced me to, now friend and brother, Nick Koumalatsos. And he is not only a modern day Spartan, but a great guy, avid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner and competitor. He is a Marine Raider, someone who's experienced, combat at the tip of the spear, and just an awesome gentleman like Tyler, who does a lot for the military community, the veteran community, and just everyone around. He's someone who, really takes a strong affinity to helping others. And he wrote Excommunicated Warrior. It's a book on the 7 transitionary stages of not only just transitioning from the military to the civilian sector, but also any major profound life change, loss of a loved one, divorce, so on and so forth. So these lessons in this great piece of work can apply to anyone in any struggle, in any situation, and kind of give you I would say, blueprint of how to overcome those adversities and grow more mentally, physically, spiritually, more fortuitous at the time or during that experience. So guys, enough about me, and I want you guys to kind of take the lead. Greg, pass the mic to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, let's start with that. That's a huge, I think, topic that doesn't get spoken about enough in specifically, grappling in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world is, guys transitioning from the military and coming out, and how Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu can be used to help transition, help with anything that people struggle with when they're coming out. I mean, not only that, but even when they are deployed, right? So let's go into that a little bit. Nick, can you take us into kind of that specific topic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pass it to Tyler real quick because I think that's a big part of his story. But the thing is to kind of tee him up is, you've got to understand that all walks of life come from this. We come from this, this tribal community, and whether you're in sports, whether you're in the military, whether you're in law enforcement or what are the things called in college, Gareth? Delta Phi champion, or I don't know, whatever.
Fraternities.
Yeah, exactly. You're always a part of some tribe, and the problem is we attach our identity to that tribe, and then when that tribe goes away, we're like, well, who the hell are we? You know what I mean? I'm kind of lost here. And I think that's a big thing that jiu-jitsu can do. So I'll kind of turn it over to Tyler and to listen to his kind of story, because he found it relatively quickly after the military, which essentially saved his life. So
wow.
Yeah, you basically hit the nail on the head. I can't say enough good things about what jiu-jitsu has done for me, especially transitioning. I wish that someone could have just come and told me that that's what I needed, right? Because I was just confused and lost and just struggling all around. And someone luckily invited me in, and I went and started training and never stopped. This was 2010. And, a lot of things were happening. I wasn't sure what was going on with my life, trying to do some school stuff, some family stuff, and just had zero purpose other than that, for myself, right? That tribe, people around me to push and make me, a better human, day in and day out, so that I could be a better spouse and, a better father, all those sorts of things. I just needed somebody to come tell me like, hey man, this is what you need. And it would have just been so much easier, because I struggled even learning jiu-jitsu, because it's not, you start and you're getting your ass kicked and you're like, was this really what I need? I feel like I've gotten beat up enough, but if someone had just said, just hang out, make sure you stay, because I'm sure there's plenty of people that come in and then unfortunately they don't end up sticking around because no one's told them like, all you have to do is just stay, be patient, learn, grow, and these people will become that group that you're missing, that family. And I can't say enough good things. And thank God I did find it. I was came out kind of struggling with tons of medications from the VA. Alcohol was obviously a part of it, thinking that was going to make me feel better in some sort of way, which is clearly not the case. Even while I was training, I was still struggling back and forth with all these sorts of things. And finally, it just kind of broke through.
I was just about to ask, Tyler, do you feel like, obviously, because we've talked about this, so like you struggled even within jiu-jitsu, but do you think that the fact that you were there, that was like a constant, that was like a foundational constant that you had to keep you from like going off the deep end?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what it was. Had I not had something like that,
you had no anchor other than that was your own anchor.
Long gone. Yes, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So just that one little nagging voice that, hey, don't go too crazy tonight. You're going to try to train tomorrow evening and get crushed, but it was enough just to keep me from just going, too far off that deep end. And then eventually, as I suffered through that, I realized this is not how I want to feel and grow as a practitioner. And I was falling in love with the sport and realized that could not be part of that. So finally,
I feel like so many people don't like, if you don't find something like CrossFit or something like that, and you don't have like, you're still going to go through your transition. You're going to have, peaks and valleys of what you go through, but you still have to, while you're going through that, you have to have this anchor, this foundation, something that's keeping you from going off. Like, it's like a lifeline while you're working through your shit.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So you mentioned you wish someone had told you this, right? Like go train in jiu-jitsu, go stick with it. And I've spoken to so many vets that say like there's just not stuff out there for them, right? When they get out to transition, right? Is this something that should be part of it? Like go, hey, you need this aspect to your life to ground you, to keep you constant, to keep you there, to keep you looking forward for something for tomorrow.
Yeah,
I think that's laziness, Brian.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's laziness. Oh, there's nothing else. There's nothing else out there for me. This was it. So you peaked in the military? That was the best that you got in your life? Was that? Come on, man.
But what I'm saying is, should the military actually create some programs, right, to when you transition out?
Here's the thing. I don't know. Are you guys vets?
I'm not.
No. Okay. This is a hard thing for vets to understand. The military's purpose is not to make veterans good civilians. The military's purpose is to go fuck shit up overseas and fight terrorists and win our nation's wars. All right. Yeah. So like the whole thing about like, oh, well, they should have done this and they don't have to do anything. You signed up. You're the one that volunteer. We're all volunteer service. And if you're going into special operations and these other special things, you're volunteering again. You can quit at any time and go back to the regular Marine Corps or the regular military. So this is an all volunteer service. The military, this is something I blame the Marine Corps. Look, I carved out my Marine. I don't know if you can tell. That's a huge scar. That was an EGA that I carved out of my arm because I blame the military for how my life was or how I felt or whatever it may be. But the fact of the matter is, it's not the military's job to make Nick a good civilian or make Tyler a good civilian. That was something that we were in service of. So, we can put it on them saying, could they have a program like to get you out a little bit easier? Sure. But at the end of the day, that's not their mission. Their mission is to go fight and win our nation's wars.
That's a good point. I mean, hey, that's even more of a reason for jiu-jitsu organizations to get involved with that.
100%.
You know,
So-
Gareth, you gonna jump in there? I think Gareth was gonna.
Yeah.
So I think, there needs to be that, emphasis and the availability, right? My biggest, the barrier objections I hear the most, I hear it a lot with LEOs is, I don't have the time. It's way too expensive. And those are bullshit excuses. I mean,
100%.
I fucking literally swept the blood and sweat soaked mats, unclogged toilets, scrubbed the piss soaked floors at our first jiu-jitsu academy, recycled and wore this same sweat soaked gi that smelled like a fucking dead whale.
Gets that cat piss smell to it, you know.
And after rugby, after leaving Buenos Aires, Argentina, and almost severing my spinal cord and having a career-ending injury that derailed and ultimately caused a huge identity death, and I was in the deepest depths of darkness, depression, and despair, jiu-jitsu was that one gleam and glimpse of positive light, and it was fucking brutal. The first day on the mats, I got my ass kicked by a girl who was 120 pounds soaking wet. So for a dude who's
Is that verified, Tyler? Can we verify that actually happened?
100%.
We need to review that role. That's the one we need.
Yeah.
That's the one we need to get.
Got to reenact that rule.
I was a strong dude. I just got done playing international rugby, and I got my ass fucking beat for an hour and a half. And I was like, there's something to this. I need to learn this superpower that is grappling. And it was a strike and blow to my ego, but I think I needed to replace one hardship with another, and I replaced the hardship of my own mental battle that was waging the space between my own ears with jiu-jitsu, and at least it was a way for me to externalize those subconscious feelings, to express pain, the anguish, the adversity. And there's a lot leading up into that. It's not only the instant causation of depression, it's also the unearthing of all those subconscious traumas that we've received that all kind of come out and boil to the surface when you're going through an adversity. So for the 2 hours I was on the mats, I forgot about all that shit. I was solely focused on survival, not thinking about the past, thinking about the future, and you have one foot in the past, one foot just on the present. And if you're not present, you're not something present on a day-to-day basis, then you're getting inside your own head. You're thinking about the past, you're depressed. You're thinking about the future, you're anxious, right? Solely plugging into the moment of the now is what everyone needs. So some people get it through boxing. Some people get it through jiu-jitsu. I get it through motorcycle riding, right? Like yesterday, I like teetering on the line of life and death. And I think that's what gives, fortunately, all the things I love to do are the things that could fucking kill me. But jiu-jitsu is great because it gives people the ability to just block everything out, solely practice and focus in on the person in front of them. And it's an interchange and exchange of energy. You're literally exposing your soul to another human being. And it's the most intimate form of sport. I mean, there's a reason why, the Greeks were Creation were wrestlers. Those are the original sports. You had the decathlon, running events, and you had grappling. It is hardwired and epigenetically linked to every atom and fiber in our body and soul. And so I think guys, especially, but also girls, need a fight, right? Jiu-jitsu gives you a fight, gives you that ability to tap into that inner caveman, that inner warrior. And then after you get done with jiu-jitsu, it's all good. The rest of your day, there's nothing that can be thrown your way that you don't have the mental fortitude and grit to overcome. And I think that is what it's fucking throwing yourself in the fire and battling through heat and pressure and then emerging, maybe scathed, emerging triumphant nonetheless.
I think to Nick's point, it's like, the military is their job is to train you, not to set you up when you're done with your service. So, and I think there's a lot of awareness, generally getting bigger now, I think, more than it was years ago, about how much there is a need for jiu-jitsu for guys that get out of the service. That now it's really on us. It's not about us saying, oh, there should be services for us. No, we got to man the fuck up and do it on our own here. And but I think there's enough awareness now where people see this need. Now it's up to us, guys, and especially you guys, the vets coming out that do jiu-jitsu, that could be able to, start and get more than just doing a couple of events, and getting a bunch of guys that are veterans. We got to go, I think, something way bigger than that. And I think something will happen like that the more we do things like this. But specifically, Nick, I got a couple of questions for you. One of my former instructors when I first started in full contact karate was Force Recon in the 60s and 70s. And I actually assisted him and taught on the Marine Corps base in Garden City, New York for about 5 years for hand-to-hand combat. This was back in the day before like MCMAP and all of that, which is the Marine Corps martial arts program. And then I was a purple
Line
belt.
training is what they were calling it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was starting, and then it was kind of like I was hearing about MCMAP. People were asking me some questions because I was a purple belt then. Because everybody hears about, like sometimes like the SEALs train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You have some like guys in Army, SF, and Green Berets that train. But what's it like in the Raider community and in, Force Recon back in the day and all that? Was it Jiu-Jitsu as prominent in the Marines?
Well, I want to answer that real quick. I want to tie into what Gareth said, and then I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So talking about, there's this meme where it's like you see this guy and he's like thinking about bills and money and like his family and all these different things. And he's just like, the thought bubbles are going crazy and it's just stress. And then he goes into the mats and he just, leaves it all on the mats, and he comes out and his like thought is like his brain is clear. When people are going through these issues and like what Tyler was talking about, there is an actual chemical thing and hormones happening to your body. Cortisol's in your body. You're stressed. There's things there's physical attributes, and Gareth and Tyler both have degrees in this, so they can actually talk about it probably a little bit better than I can. But there's an actual chemical response happening in your body. And then when you go do these things, when you go, and you go make contact with another human being and you're playing that mental chess and you're sweating and you're exhausted, this is down regulating your cortisol and increasing your dopamine. And this is the reason why we have guys feel better after they do this. Same thing with like working out or CrossFit or, across the board. It is to down regulate stress hormones and increase that dopamine response. And that's where you start to feel better. And so I think there's it's not just doing the thing, there's an actual chemical reaction that's happening inside of our brains and our bodies that is causing this positive reaction. Does that make sense, Gareth, Tyler? Am I saying that correctly?
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's exactly it. And it almost becomes addicting in a sense, but an addiction good way, right? We all have addictive personalities, whether or not we want to admit it or not. And we are attracted and chemically, intrinsically linked to serotonin and dopamine receptors. Right. And yeah, I think just getting into a habitual routine, this is something that Nick and I talked at length about. The days where I don't train jiu-jitsu, I feel as if there's a huge part of me missing. In the mornings, I've been doing yoga, mindfulness, and meditation. After I retreat out to Montana, I realized the importance of, just sitting still, just concentrating on your breath, blocking out thoughts and all those worries and anxieties, and just getting in touch with a harmonious rhythmic breathing process, which to me has always been a huge struggle,
But then there's that education point. There's that education point. Once you realize like, oh, wait a minute, I'm feeling this. I need to go output. I need to get this output out so that I get that dopamine response, and then I'm better again. So there's an education point to it as well.
And I've been consistently training more and more, and I have Greg and Hampton's Jiu-Jitsu to thank for that because, listen, we all go through our adversities and our struggles. In the last, I'd say 10 months, I've been in an extremely dark, somewhat depressed place. Long story short, Jiu-Jitsu has always been that constant. And when things get tough, that's where I see the benefit of Jiu-Jitsu even more. And so, just having that daily consistency, the ability to block out all those thoughts, the ability to just be present in the moment, the ability to downregulate cortisol and those stress release hormones that cause us to store body fat and lower testosterone, and increasing the things that increase our serotonin, dopamine feedback loops in our mind, and then our bodies innervates our bodies with positive vibrations, and those positive vibrations then radiate out into everything else in this world. Our relationships with our friends, our family, our abilities to successfully close a business meeting. It's and force multiplier have you for improving all those other areas and all those other facets of life. Just from that one practice, just from that one murder yoga session where fucking holding onto your fucking shoulder like a goddamn spider monkey.
Yeah, it's true.
Frontal attack. Nothing in life will be as difficult. And it's an instant reset. I feel good. I feel relaxed. I feel connected. I feel a sense of tribe, community. And all those serotonin and dopamine chemicals are now coursing through my body, and I feel amazing. So
yeah, your day changes a little bit when you wake up, and the first thing you do is 15 of your friends try to kill you. And the rest of the day is like, they die. So
I think so. You know, we talk about this so much in jiu-jitsu, right? Like, you know, nothing's going to be that hard after someone just tried to choke you for 4 minutes straight. Do you know what I mean, or whatever the case is? Yeah. The day gets pretty easy. Yeah, it's okay. I'm not going to worry about that.
Greg, you're talking about about the Marine Corps and with Raiders. So McMap kind of came in a little bit after I came in, and the initial phases of McMap, with what Bristol was doing and the kind of the things that they it was really badass. It was much more like a kind of an MMA kind of full-rounded martial arts system. But unfortunately, like with any institution, when you make things required and you do things that are like for rank and for belt, it gets watered down. Kind of the things that Gareth and I were talking about that with some of the places that are like, you have to be a blue belt. If you're a cop, you got to be a blue belt. And we're like, great idea, right? But then how does that play into scalability? And like, it takes a long time to become a blue belt. It takes a lot of time on the mats. And so like, are they letting them, are they paying for it? Are they giving them the time and energy? Is it on your own? Or is it one of those things like, I got a guy, I'll hook you up, blah, 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 blah. And then it's going to show on the streets. But for my time in the military, we were, you talked about prior to like in the late 90s, we were so focused on deployments. Some guys did a little bit of stuff here and there. It was a small little practice. Some guys would roll and some guys would do certain things, but it wasn't on like an institutional level. It was much more combat orientated and just smashing people and weapons retention and things like that. Now today, there actually are being jiu-jitsu contracted practitioners coming in and teaching the teams and teaching operators how to actually roll and manipulate, bodies and joints and things like that on a more professional level than it was. So that is something that has kind of taken place in the past couple of years. That's grown, which is really awesome to see.
That's awesome. I mean, I even thought of it like as like a, so many years people are like, oh, how many, like Marines, any special operations unit can benefit from the techniques and they can use that techniques in battle. And I think it's more so not even about that, even just the ability to be safe while rolling, while deployed. And that's going to have the benefits of that. We're all just talking about when you're not deployed. But what about when you are deployed? You guys can all on your own time when you're doing PT or whatever, be rolling in a safe way. I think that's even more so than trying to do techniques in battle.
Yeah.
And also, the talking about like the neurochemical sequence of events that happens in a fight or flight response, it enables you to shift from your reptilian brain to your prefrontal cortex. It enables you to conceptually and psychologically deal with stressful, adverse situations where I've been here before. I know what it's like to have a grown-ass man try to strangle me from a mounted position. I know what it's like to have someone grab a knife out of my hand or a gun out of my hand. I can't tell you how many like beneficial aspects and in many ways situations. Yesterday, I got hit by a fucking car, almost smacked into a telephone pole. Honestly, had I not been someone who trained in jiu-jitsu and didn't have the calm, cool, collective confidence of dealing with stressful, adverse situations, I could have went left instead of right and went into oncoming traffic. Had a situation, I'll make a long, short story of it, but 5 years ago, I was sailing, preparing for an open water sail, got hit with a gale force storm out of nowhere, lost our mainsail, lost our jib sail. Boat was listed on the starboard side for close to 12 hours. Had no other choice but to put the bow lines around my waist and low crawl for close to 45 minutes. So finally, the keel of the sailboat released itself from the sandbar we were stuck on. It pulled me underneath the boat and basically dragged me for close to what seemed like an eternity, but close to 5 or 6 minutes. As I pulled one of the bow lines off, the other one got tighter, went around my carotid artery, literally started to black out, felt this warm, like ambience kind of caressing and like overcoming my body, and literally came to terms with the fact that I was going to drown. And I was like, fuck that. I'm a fighter. I'm going to get through this. I literally used rear naked choke defense, pulled the bow line down, was able to then swim my arm through, pull it down to my belly, and fucking was able to catch air and get to the surface of the water. Had I not trained jiu-jitsu, I know for a fact I would have died that day out in the water.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it just has the ability to empower us and protect us and safeguard us and our families and our friends and society as a whole in a different way. That's why I love law enforcement.
And I think you brought up a good point, right? Because you said, fuck that. We all do that in jiu-jitsu. Someone's like on top of us, or we're mounted, or we're in a bad position. You're like, fuck that. I'm not accepting it, right? And it's a question. You don't accept your crappy position. You're not going to lose, right? We get into that mindset where you're like, fuck that. I'm not submitting to this. I am not. Do you know what I mean? I am going to get out of this the best I can.
Conceding failure is not an option. I think that's else what jiu-jitsu gives you. There's always a fighting chance, right? Always a glitz and hope, and you can
all the way to the end.
Yeah, that more than any other martial art teaches that, you know, the perseverance in adversity. And I mean, and that to me is more important for these guys, you know, in serving than the fact that maybe I can pull off an armbar in a combative situation. I think,
exactly,
you know, like that's exactly what these guys should be able to access in while serving and while not.
And to Nick's point earlier, you know, it's not accepting a shitty situation, right? You come out of the military, and sometimes you're in this place, right? It's not accepting that situation you're in. It's improving your situation.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, if I may, what we like to talk about too is also, obviously you don't want to accept, you know, any type of failure or you know, submission, whatever the case is, but we teach the kids, you know, kind of be comfortable in an uncomfortable situation, right? You know, it's okay to struggle some, you know. We put people, when we roll with the kids, the ladies, just everybody, the adults, males, doesn't matter, putting them in the situation already, you know, letting someone take their back, maybe even sink in the choke, and then struggle from there, right? Just to embrace, sometimes, you know, they're not going to get out, but just to embrace that grind and that struggle, and just to know to just try again, right? After that, it's okay to not even get out, but just to not give up or quit, or make sure you come back the next day, even though you got choked 12 times, right? You know, obviously, of course, we want to try to combat that position or the submission or whatever, get out 100%, right? But also just to be able to have a collected mind and stay cool and use technique, as opposed to, you know, as the white belts like to do, just spaz out a little bit, you know, so that you can actually apply proper technique and have a level head for when, you know, shit really hits the fan, or you're on the street, or you're whatever the case is, right? So, you know, just embrace that darkness of having Gareth on top of you and mount, and just, you know, keep a cool, calm, collected head, and so, you know, start to use technique, or just be able not to panic, and, you know, just kind of embrace that struggle a little bit. And that's just going to build, I think, character. We do it with the kids a lot, just so they can, you know, this isn't, you know, we're not chasing butterflies out on the baseball diamond. We're, you know, you're in here to grow in your mind, you know. So that's kind of where we're at with some of the stuff we do.
So that's what you've been doing with me for the past 2 years, just putting me in, just making sure that I stay uncomfortable all the time.
Yeah. That's growth. That's growth, baby. You're welcome.
Forging in people's souls grit, right? Grit is such an essential part of the life process. And, you know, you look back even 100 years ago, you know, people were tilling the soil at 7 years old. They were farming. I mean, my grandmother and great-grandmother, my great-grandfather is literally a fucking Viking from Stockholm, Sweden. He was out to sea 300 plus days out of the year. So my grandmother, from the time she was 4 or 5 years old, was milking dairy cows. She was running a farm with her mother, you know, like that was 75 years ago. Now kids are sitting on the freaking couch eating Twinkies, watching Oprah, and fucking hanging out on an island. Oh, and they're tough. So the relevance of, like,
Gareth, you don't know how hard they have it. It's so hard. I don't know what they're going through, man. So tough.
but also I do feel empathetic towards the next up and coming generation with COVID, with the ability to not communicate or interact or socialize, with the fear mongering, and just we're literally creating a shell shocked youth that is taught and learned to walk and walk through life not with confidence or grit or fortitude, but with fear and trepidation and anxiety. That is fucking horrible.
Yeah,
like
we're trying to counter that, Gareth, with the vaccine of the triangle choke at Crest.
This is something I say all the time.
Come on in
believe
for your vaccine.
I believe everyone should actually grow up grappling. Like that should be like mandated, because it teaches you like a totally different mindset. It teaches you like not to give in, not to quit. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a very basic form of humanness, and I think it should be taught at a very young age, like growing up wrestling. I think it changes your mindset completely.
Well, just think about one of the biggest anxiety points that human beings have is being grabbed or being touched by another person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Altercations or confrontation, right?
Yeah, that concept of just having like that right there. And if you remove that from a young man or a young girl from essentially at like a 5-year-old level, mm-hmm. like their confidence and their mentality for the rest of their life is completely different from everyone around them.
Yep, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I think that's 100%. Is with everything that I've done in my career, in my life, I still feel a change doing jiu-jitsu and doing like Gareth saying, murder yoga, and just having huge guys try to like Gareth try to kill me, for 5 minutes at a time. Like I even feel my confidence boost at where I'm at in my life, which would you wouldn't think so, right? Like everything that I've done in my life, in my career, but now I have so much more of a confident nature of how to be able to handle myself and control other human beings, even to another degree.
Right.
And it changes everything in your brain.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also Tyler, you were saying this earlier, it's not even necessarily like sometimes you're winning, sometimes you're losing, right? But you could handle yourself. You could handle yourself. And that's the important part. You're not going to be uncomfortable in that situation, whether you win or lose.
Right. Yeah. One other thing on that is, that's kind of the things I look at with the kids program and the females specifically, but obviously everybody else as well. But, for them, I'm trying to make them I'm trying to build their character, maybe even more so than I care about, whether they can perfectly land an armbar. Of course, we want to get that down too, but not all those kids are going to be great competitors, and you got to realize that. But we still have an obligation, I think, to push them and make them, grow just as well, at least in their mind, if nothing else. We've got a couple kids that it's just hard to watch sometimes. They suffer day in and day out, but I'd keep patting them on the back at the end of the day and make sure they come back to the next class, because that's my job, and I think that's important that they do. So that's kind of where I'm at with it, and that's the way I try to look at it.
Yeah, I think too, one of the things is one of the things I love about grappling is you could take like an average athlete, right, or someone who has some decent talent, and through that determination and that grit and just training and the consistency, and turn them into a really great athlete in in that sport if they stay committed to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I say all the time, even if kids don't stay with it, even a little bit of jiu-jitsu or gymnastics specifically, is like the best one of those two, because that's going to give them spatial relationship, proprioception, and it's going to be just translate to any sport that they do, not even talking about the mental benefits and all that. And then Nick, you brought up before, what were you talking about before with like being a blue belt? You talk about police, military, or both? Like, that's like the talk now, right? You're seeing a lot of people saying they want them to minimally be a blue belt. And I think it dilutes it a little bit, right? You mentioned like McMap with the belts and all that. Like, so I was always thinking like incentive wise, like, why not just give like each belt level in jiu-jitsu that somebody has legitimately is X amount of points on a police test or military. So that's like incentive for people to train, rather than saying there's a program that you should take, you know, and like you said, it dilutes it, like making a McMap or making people try to be a minimum of blue belt. That may dilute that. What about incentivizing people to train before they even try to serve?
I agree. I think that anytime that you put like what you just said, like a point system on promotions, things like that, they're going to figure out a way to like get that requirement without having to put the work in. Like, how do you, that's the question, is how do you incentivize these guys to do it on their own and actually get the skills instead of shortcutting, because now it's a system that they have to fall into, right? It's like your pistol qual. And it's like, if you're not into shooting pistol, they're just like, oh God, I gotta go shoot my pistol qual, or oh, I gotta go to jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? It's like, how do you crack the nut to get these officers to understand that this is going to potentially save their life, but also teach them, and this is the biggest, and Gareth and I were actually talking about this, is, you know, if you're trained in a way that you're able to calm, cool, and collective, either de-escalate a situation, or you know that you don't have to go straight to a gun. You don't have to pull out your weapon because you have other skills that others might not have. Like, there might be some officer that has no other skills and they go straight to that. But if you are a practitioner and you're like, you know, I'm not really, the escalation here for me is I'm not really that nervous. I can handle this situation. I don't need to go straight to a taser or straight to a gun. You know, so now we're having less shootings, right? So I think there's a couple different factors here, but it has to be figured out how to be incentivized, that it's a real thing and it's not for promotion, or it's not for some sort of institutional requirement that waters the process down. Because anytime that you do that, it's going to water it down. People are going to find shortcuts, and you're not going to get the quality that they're intending.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, a couple times, took police tests and filled out forms, and it's like, oh, did you serve, and like, minority, things like that, and I'm like, man, where's my +10 for being a jiu-jitsu black belt? I mean, don't they want that as a skill, you know?
Yeah, I think the whatever department they're with or whatever should be paying to make this stuff happen, but instead of putting a belt level on it, just required a minimum amount of time, and
I like that a lot better, way better.
And then they have to show some type of proficiency as they move through, so that academy continues to get paid.
Well,
that way,
it time and consistency, right? So it's time, and you keep going, not
like
you
logging
go.
hours. You have to have so many hours a week that you
got to log. You got to keep track, right? Yep.
Yeah. I like that. Tyler, I think that's a great. Somebody messaged somebody.
Yeah, not only
is Mitch listening, Gareth?
He's not, but I'll send this to Mitch for sure.
Yeah, we'd like to get Mitch back on here specifically because we're Adopt a Cop at the Academy, and we love that program. But that's kind of like where we see it going. Like, not only having incentive for people to train, but to keep training. Because how many stories I hear with the people I know that are on the job, and that we're required to do what in the academy, some kind of combatives, and then they're not even required to ever else again in their career. And even if they are, it's not mandated.
Exactly. Jiu-jitsu is it's just like pistol shooting. It's just like surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding. If you're not keeping up with it and maintaining it and constantly striving to, sharpen those skill sets, then you lose it. You absolutely do. And so just because someone went through the police academy, they checked the box, and now they're getting a posthumously awarded blue belt, means that bullshit if you can't apply a big escape when someone's on top of you and trying to use their pistol as a weapon against you, or trying to deploy a knife against you. And shame on anyone who is issuing blue belts to people just to check the box. If your students haven't poured blood and sweat equity onto the mats and they haven't earned that right, then they do not deserve a stripe on their belt. They do not deserve a blue belt. To get to the rank of a blue belt is a fucking difficult, arduous feat. Most people stop before they even get their first stripe on their white belt. And so to water down something that Nick has sacrificed to get to the level of, or any of us have sacrificed to get to the level of, is an absolute disrespect. And so I think the hours on mat should weigh heavier than the color of belt
Yep.
or rank, right? So I think that's a good way to switch.
Time in. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Every day you check in, you log 2 hours today. All right. 2 hours goes into your total bank of time on mat, right? And then at the end of it, you have to log whatever,
Right.
150 hours.
Yeah, and think about too, like, you know, we're talking about this. Think about if they had to start their day with an hour of training before they even went on the job. We talked about becoming present, right, and being able to be in the correct mindset. You know, if you had to train, you know, your first hour of your day was training.
Yes.
Think about the mindset you'll be in at the end of that.
100%. I mean, we've seen. So my friend Jay Gawk and I. Las Vegas SWAT officer, works in the DA's office out in Jersey. Great guy and Army vet. Him and I started an initiative kind of on the banner of Adopt a Cop, where it's free jiu-jitsu and combatives defensive tactics seminars. And, you know, we started like 6 people. And now, you know, with that program and that initiative, we have close to 35, sometimes 40 officers, you know, literally taking off their free time, showing up. You know, we started with basic punch defense, how to throw an effective combination, how to block an effective combination, how to use a hug arm bar to manipulate body position, and goes off the C4C curriculum created by Chad Lyman. He's a black belt at Extreme Couture in Vegas, 30-year SWAT veteran, great friend of mine, and someone who created a very systematic course, basically, and it's predicated upon, you know, breaking the structure of your attacker, breaking the posture of your attacker, and then creating an angle of attack, right? Because you could give someone a bunch of arbitrary techniques, but if you can't apply them in a life or death situation when cortisol is at an all-time high, norepinephrine is clouding their judgment, what good are those techniques? You know, it should be a systems-based learning process. And so we start, you know, with basic punch defense. Then we go from there, hug arm bar, how to transition, how to put someone on the ground effectively, how to administer handcuff techniques. But then also having them run outside, having them get into a foot pursuit. Once they get into the academy, throwing a knife in the mix. Now they're tired, now they're fatigued, norepinephrine's racing through their veins. Now it's not just a drilled session, it's a life or death mock scenario where these people are now just fighting on their own neurochemistry as well as multiple attackers or assailants. And it's been great to see that learning curve and just the hunger and the zest that these officers have to continuously learn. And, you know, we just need that enthusiasm. If you're a professional peace officer, police officer, you're in the military and you're not training combatives, you're a fucking liability. You know, everyone should be training. If you're a civilian, if you're a father, if you're a son, a daughter, and you want to protect your friends and honestly protect society as a whole, you should be training. If not, you're a liability, you know? And I think it should be part of standard curriculum for everybody, not just those in dangerous positions of respondership, but so that's my tirade for the day.
So we're back to start teaching grappling at a young age in grade school. You know, that's it.
Yeah, I think there's something with you know, I think Hannah and here and Gracie, they do, you know, awesome job with like the Gracie combatives that they do tied to the police in the area, even the military too. And I don't know why, but I think there was something teased by Hannah that something may be coming down the line, that maybe some kind of a, you know, mandated training for some police. So I think one police, I don't forget what state and town it was in, but that they made it mandatory for their officers, and that like might be the start. But like you said, it's you got to be careful in how you do that. You don't want to do it by, you know, belt or making it its own system that dilutes. You got to. I like that time in. I really like that time in, and you know, verify it by an academy owner. You know, maybe they have a card signed by the academy owner each time, and that's how they verify their time in and their mat time. You know, maybe that's one way. I don't know.
Right.
I think Tyler nailed it. I think that's the solution right there. Is just hey, you need X amount of hours a week, X amount of hours a month, and then X amount of hours a year. You know what I mean? And then you can based off your bennies or, you know, your promotion points or whatever based off time, not a belt. You start chasing belts, I mean, you're gonna screw the whole system up. But if you, I mean, hours on the mat, right, Coach? Like that's what it comes down to always, regardless of everything's hours on the mat.
Yeah, I mean, think how many places are struggling, how many academies are struggling in this pandemic. Like, can you imagine if it got to the point where every local municipality and police agency had to verify their time cards with a local professor? I mean, that could just support local academies like insane in the country. So.
That'd be great.
100%. Yeah. Hey, Nick, what was the age when the Greek boys get ripped off the mommy's tit and get thrown into the
about
program?
7.
7?
So
Yeah, we should do that. 7 years old,
Yeah.
kids should have to go to a summer camp all summer and just go do jiu-jitsu and striking and stuff. Just 3 months.
Oh. Well, you know what? Forget gym. Just replace gym with grappling. End of story.
There you go.
know?
I like that too. Yeah, no more dodge.